Welcome to the Alouettes Flightdeck, the podcast dedicated to Montreal Alouettes football. I'm Cliffy D. You can find me on Twitter at Cliffy D.
And I'm Tim Capper. You can find me on Twitter at Repack. That's REPPACT. And this episode of the podcast is presented by our good friends over at SportBuff, where if you use the promo code FlightDeck-10 at checkout, you will earn 10% off your entire order. So head over to sportbuffshop.com, use the code, save some money, and get some sweet, sweet merch.
And the Alouettes Flight Deck is all over social media. You can follow us on Twitter at AlouettesFLDeck, on Facebook at Alouettes Flight Deck Pod, on Instagram at Alouettes Flight Deck. And now, folks, you can follow and subscribe. Please do subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is officially at youtube.com/Alouettes Flight Deck. No Snapchat, no TikTok, none of that nonsense.
And we also wanted to congratulate Martin Bougie for winning the pair of SportBuff Flight Cruise seats for this week's game versus the BC Lions. Congratulations. And also stay tuned, everybody. The next pair will be going up for the September 23rd game. It's a Friday night versus the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So stay tuned for the next episode of the podcast where you can join for the chance to win that pair of tickets to see the game. Okay, I was trying to think of an analogy here, Cliff, after what we saw this past week. And by the way, want to mention to everybody that we actually brought in Reid Johnson from the Markcast, who's going to be talking about the game this week. He's going to be talking about what he and their group has deemed what do they call themselves? America's team, the BC Lions.
But America's CFL team.
Yes, yes. We'll be talking with Reid in a little bit. But we had similar hopes for what the Alouettes were going to do this week, even with all the drama that occurred after the bye week, with VA being traded, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't want to rehash what happened, but everybody knows. And I think for me, Cliff, it was a good, this is the best analogy that I could use, is today I went over to Le Col Montréal and I went to this little niche place where that they sold U.S. based or candy from the U.S., Europe, et cetera, that you can't get here. And my thought was, this stuff is so much better than the non-name brand where, you can go in and you can get the no-name brand or you can get the PC brand or it tastes so much better. And so I bought what I wanted. It tasted exactly what I thought it was going to taste like, Cliff. Mm-hmm. The Alouettes, unfortunately, last week represented... I don't know if they actually represented PC brand or no name brand. It was one of those offshoot brands that try to use a name of something that sounds like a brand name, but in no way, shape, or form is that brand name.
I think the best, if you're going to use an analogy, why don't we use the one that I've always loved from The Simpsons, when Mr. Burns wanted to get Steven Spielberg to direct his movie, but instead had to go with his non-union Mexican equivalent. I think what we saw last Friday was the non-union Mexican equivalent of the Montreal Alouettes.
Yes, or the non-name brand of Coke. This was even below RC Cola, Cliff, and that's that's saying something.
I mean, the grocery store cola that you can get for like 50 cents a can still out of their vending machine. I mean, that's really what it was.
Does anybody still drink RC Cola? When's the last time you had RC Cola?
Oh, geez, I haven't had that in a dog's age. I mean, sheesh, man. As far as like sodas go, I mean, Coke and Pepsi won that war quite handily.
Oh, yeah. And I think with RC, a quick third, if you were to give him that. But yeah.
And you know what's even funny? I don't think anyone under the age of 30 knows what the we're talking about.
Yeah, you're probably right. So do your due diligence, go to the Google machine, type in RC Cola, and voila, there you go. Anyways,
so that's your Montreal Alouettes, folks, right now.
Yeah, you're exactly. I think you're correct on that one. There were hopes going to this. The Alouettes we were hoping was going to extend their, they were going to extend their winning streak. They were going to, get closer to an actual first place, not necessarily by points, but with actual record and stuff like that, to the Toronto Argonauts. Solidify their spot in second place in the Eastern Division. And albeit for one drive, which I deemed on social media as a statement drive, which a lot of people agreed with, not all in social media, but elsewhere. Other than that, it was non-name brand Alouettes for the rest of this game. You called it last week by calling it a potential trap game. This was a trap game. This was shades. Would you call this shades of that infamous game on Canada Day in Ottawa versus the Renegades? Does it even equate to that game?
Not even a little bit, because that game, Montreal was completely dominant and then completely crapped the bed. Whereas this game, neither team looked really dominant. Neither team looked cohesive for the most part. I mean, there's spurts of good from both, but it took a while for everybody to get going. But I mean, once Ottawa found their groove and Nick Arbuckle he's really come alive. It's so funny, like how sometimes it just takes the right system for a quarterback to finally be showing his worth. I mean, we saw what he did when he was in Calgary. I mean, he looked really good when he was a member of the Stampeders. Good enough that he was able to. The Red Blacks had traded for him in 2020, traded for the first overall pick for his rights to be able to have him, and then he never ended up actually playing for the Red Blacks. Ended up signing with the Argos. Did nothing of note there. Went to Edmonton. Looked even terrible there.
Got treated even worse there.
Yep. And then, lo and behold, ends up traded back to the Red Blacks. So eventually plays for them. And wouldn't you know it, this is the system that finally works for Nick Arbuckle. And we weren't sure. Like, after that game against Edmonton, we thought, okay, was Ottawa... Is Ottawa better than we thought, or was it just because they were playing a really bad Elks team? Turns out maybe they are better than what we thought they were. Maybe this really was the magic formula, like having Nick Arbuckle as quarterback and just the relationship he has with his receivers, and just everything just seemed to fall into place. And Montreal just really, truly had no answer for Nick Arbuckle and the Ottawa Red Blacks last Friday.
No, none at all. And despite what some of the fans what we were hearing from the fans about, how good or bad Arbuckle was, Arbuckle, he is the prototypical CFL quarterback. He was able to get out of trouble. He was able to, some of the passes that he had, which was absolutely amazing. But it's just something that the Alouettes, certain things with the Alouettes should have been able to capitalize on, could not. Can we give him a mulligan? I mean, some may say, could we give him a mulligan because of what happened last week? No, you still need to go and play. We do understand that things did happen. You know what? You look at how this game ended up with the Owls losing 38-24 to the Red Blacks. Did the trade of Vernon Adams hurt this team more than some were letting on? It's
100%.
Yeah.
I think he basically took the wind out of the sails of this team in a lot of ways. It started with what happened with this whole situation. Gary Stern basically being, shunted off to the nether realm. Vernon Adams being traded to the BC Lions. I mean, those were two big parts of this team. And let's not forget earlier too, like the firing of Kahari Jones and Baron Miles, like all the things that made this football team magical and fun to begin with. You've essentially gotten rid of those things. You've basically cut them off at the knees. Like you have eliminated those things, and this is what you've ended up with. Like you've made your bed, and now the Montreal Alouettes have to lie in it. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, this is the environment they have fostered. This is the environment they have nurtured and created, and now this is the result of it.
And I've never been so scared of an upcoming bye week. Next week.
Yeah. What else could possibly happen? What other insane possible thing could possibly happen to this football team? And the thing that really kills me is a lot of it is self-inflicted. Like, these are moves that were planned in advance and now have been given the opportunity to go ahead with. When you think about it, it took a bye week for Danny Machocha to get rid of Kahari Jones and Baron Miles, so that he can instill himself as the head coach and bring in Noel Thorpe as defensive coordinator. Like, these were moves that he wanted to make, but obviously couldn't because of everything that had happened in the past. He just needed an out. And the bye week and the less than favorable results that Kahari had posted to that point basically led to that change being made. Now with this other bye week that just passed, more changes are being made. Now that Gary Stern, who was a very vocal supporter of Vernon Adams and someone who really was not shy about sharing his opinions on the team, good, bad, or other. Now that he's essentially been muffled, now you pretty much have free reign to do what you want, because now you don't have to necessarily answer to Gary Stern. You have to answer to the estate of Sid Spiegel. And I don't know just how interested they are in the day-to-day operations of the Alouettes, other than paying the bills and making sure everybody gets their paychecks. You basically now have free reign. Now you can do the thing you wanted to do, and that was get rid of Vernon Adams.
Right, and by the way, if anybody wanted to hear this in its entirety, you can head over to the previous episode where I know Cliff and I we talk about it. We were pretty, I think, we were vocal, but we were pretty calm based on the situation. But yeah, it's as we're about to get to, Cliff, and as I mentioned, what else can happen with this upcoming bye week? But I mean, we don't want to look, like the Owls. Maybe they may have done. We don't want to look ahead to anything. But I think in this circumstance, we just need to maybe cross our fingers and go buy a lotto ticket that nothing major occurs. But again, that's for next week.
Well, I mean, there's still moves that can be made. There's still things that can be done to try and change things. I think a lot's going to depend what happens this Friday versus the BC Lions. Mm-hmm. And again, it's one of those weird games where I had already considered it an L, and then Nathan Rourke got hurt. Mm-hmm. I thought, oh, okay, maybe now the Alouettes have a chance, because I mean, with Nathan Rourke in the lineup, forget it. That's pretty much a guaranteed win as far as I was concerned. But then, okay, well, I'm pretty sure we could beat Antonio Pipkin or Michael O'Connor just based on how they played that first game in the post-Nathan Rourke era.
Mm-hmm. And their previous history in Montreal.
Right. But also now that they've gone ahead and traded Vernon Adams to the BC Lions, knowing full well they're going to play those same BC Lions, I have to wonder about that, because quite frankly, with all of the offensive firepower that the BC Lions have, I got to say they're going to be in very, very tough. And now you throw in the wrinkle of Vernon Adams, who I don't care what happens. I don't care how many high roads he takes. I don't care how many nice things he has to say and how he doesn't want to get into the, mudslinging or any of that stuff. He doesn't want to, say anything bad about the Alouettes at this point, and good on him for it. But deep down, there's got to be a little part of him that's just frothing, foaming at the mouth to want to get out there and prove to this team, prove to the Alouettes, you made a huge mistake, and I am going to show you.
We'll see. Again, we'll see what happens to it. We'll delve into that a little bit more once we get into the actual preview itself. The Owls, overall, you look what the Owls did. Still, 22 first downs. They had 145 yards rushing. Dude, they had a 9.1 yard average rushing on 16 carries. That's one of my issues. Passing yards of 256. Very few penalties. Time of possession, it's basically half. But the problem is, again, interceptions, a fumble and a scoop and score. Again, only 4 penalties for the Alouettes. That's fantastic. But it keeps going into this narrative, like you've brought up a couple times, in which we've done before for all of our starting quarterbacks, through time, since we've been doing this pod. We have a quarterback that is hot and cold. We have a Jekyll and Hyde quarterback once again. And I think there needs to be some consistency. Maybe there needs to be a change. But the problem is right now, with the amount of money that they're paying Trevor, Trevor has improved. Right now, yes, I will say Trevor Harris is our quarterback. He is our quarterback. But again, it's just some things need to improve. This is my thought here, Cliff, is that the Alouettes, as I said on social media, they made a statement drive. And I think I mentioned it to you before it occurred. They were 101 yards away. If they could make a statement drive and score, they could take over this game in a heartbeat. Well, what'd they do, Cliff? Not only did they score a touchdown, but they did it by running the ball down the Red Blacks' throats. Mm-hmm. And these weren't just short runs. But following this, you have the scoop and score by the Red Blacks on the next Alouettes possession, and it just fell apart. Where the Alouettes had 8 rushes within 16 minutes or 19 minutes of the first 19 minutes of the game, And then for the rest of the game, Cliff, they had 8. Now that you can the same amount, but you can say, they would say, oh well, rushing is based on what the current game situation is and what the score is. It was 10-10 at that point. Why did you stop the running game? If you did something so well, that drive was absolute perfection. Probably, it was the first Owls drive for more than 100 yards for a touchdown since almost a year ago to the date last year. If you're doing something so well, why stop, Cliff? I just don't understand. Even so, it was 10-10. Okay, so what? They just stopped. As if the running game did not exist anymore.
Yeah, and it's funny that you keep mentioning statement drive, and you're absolutely right. That was a statement drive. Problem is, all of their other drives were statement drives, but not exactly the statement you want to be making.
Yeah, fair.
And this is what it came down to, was just the fact that the offense just at times looked lost. I mean, yes, if you were to look at the stats, just look at the stats without looking at the score, you'd think, holy cow, Trevor Harris had a great game. Walter Fletcher and Joshua Antwi, boy, those guys are good. Tyson Philpott, Gino Lewis, Reggie White Jr., man, those guys can catch a ball. Yalwa should have killed this team. But no, they just couldn't put things together properly. And this defense, I'm sorry to say, there's no heart. There's nothing. This secondary just was made look foolish by Nick Arbuckle and guys like Jalen Acklin and Nate Bahar. I mean, there was so many times I lost count how many times Nick Arbuckle was throwing up prayers. Yes. I'm like, oh, this is not. No way. This is gonna. Sure enough, it'd be one of those two guys that would bring it down. Like, how in the blue hell did you catch that?
Arbuckle was putting up Zach Caleros types of throws.
Zach Caleros, and even back in his day, Trevor Harris as a red-black would make those kind of WTF throws. And you're like, how in God's name did he complete that? Better question, how the hell was the receiver open like a 7-Eleven 24/7? Like, it's unbelievable. Wait a minute, is that why they got 7-Eleven as a sponsor for Thursday Night Football? Because they knew that the Alouettes would leave receivers wide open like that all night long?
If that would have been, it would have been in Couche-Tard,
My point remains.
Yes,
it's all well and good to talk about that statement drive. You're absolutely right. It was a phenomenal drive. If only you could put together 2 or 3 more of those drives, this may have been a whole different story. But instead, the Alouettes just got away from that sort of game and then just fell back into their old tricks. Back to, like I said, like for Trevor Harris to have the stats that he did and still look like lost out there for the most part and still holding onto the ball too long and still making poor decisions. And here's the thing. The reason why a lot of people think that we just hate on Trevor Harris. Like, listen, we're trying so hard to like this guy, but my goodness, he does not do himself any favors. And, fumbling the ball when you're that deep in Ottawa's own end for a scoop and score. I mean, yeah, okay, fine. It's a football play. It happens, but then you got to get back. You got to figure it out. And I just never felt like the Alouettes were able to figure out what was going on. And this secondary is just, they're lost. There's no direction. There's no nothing out there.
Do you think if he had been able to come back after 6 games or a couple more, getting the likes of a Greg Reid back would have helped?
It would have helped, especially too with Raheem Wilson, who I gotta say, aside from that one penalty he had that was I felt questionable at best, he actually played a pretty decent game. His first game with the Alouettes. Like, I think that's one of those guys that once he gets it figured out, they'll be fine. But at the same time, though, like the rest of the secondary is just, they have moments where they look fantastic, but I mean, 9 times out of 10, this secondary is just getting manhandled left, right, and center by receivers. Like they're having a laugh. Like that's why these guys are wide open. Is because like the defenders are just kind of in a daze practically. I think they're just chasing their own tails. Like, and you're wondering why these guys are left wide open. Like, just throw it in the flats, and I guarantee you're going to get a first down. And that, I hate to say it because I really do like Noel Thorpe as a person and actually as a coach, but that was the one thing I definitely remember, especially towards the end of his first reign here as defensive coordinator, was that seemed to be like the best strategy against a Noel Thorpe defense is throw it in the flats, and you're gonna burn these defenders every single time. Like you'll at least get your first down if nothing else. Mm-hmm. And that's got to change. I mean, I don't know if it comes down to the personnel, if it comes down to the coaching. I don't know what it is, but I mean, you know what they say: once is a mistake, twice is a choice. Well, I'm seeing a lot of choices here because this is happening over and over and over again. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I just have no answer for it. Like, I'm looking at this live, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? How is it that Nick Arbuckle is able to find these guys? Like, how is he able to throw these balls, which, for all intents and purposes, should be picked off, if nothing else, if not taken back to the house? But no, instead, he throws up a prayer, and the Red Blacks are like 20, 30 yards downfield, and a new set of downs, and they just keep marching on. They keep marching on. And yeah, a couple times they had to settle for field goals, but when they were able to score touchdowns, I mean, you're not surprised because, well, you know, it's just like clockwork. They just managed to move the chains, get the ball downfield. And the Alouettes, as I said, they're just chasing their own tail in the process. Yep. It's beyond comprehension as far as I'm concerned.
Arbuckle had 3 passes of over 30 in this game. And it was like, wow. I mean, again, you're saying, you look at Trevor's, they weren't very impressive at halftime. But Trevor ended up only throwing 7 incompletions. I mean, he was 22 of 29, 256 yards, 2 touchdowns, but the problem is 2 picks.
2 picks, forced fumble. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, too, and you brought this up earlier at the game, was when Trevor Harris, when all he does is dink and dunk his way down the field, the Alouettes do good things.
Yep.
I mean, it's not pretty football. It's boring as hell to watch. But, I mean, you know what? If you're able to score, that's all that matters. So why get away from that? Like, why get rid of the ball, even if it is, like, you know, checking it down to your running back or what have you. I mean, if this is what you have to do, so be it. Is it pretty football? No. But you know what? There are no style points. They keep saying that. There's no style points in football.
Yep.
Just get the ball downfield, move the chains, score touchdowns.
And get the W.
It shouldn't be that much harder than that. I mean, especially if you truly think you're that much better than that Ottawa Red Blacks team, which now I'm starting to wonder, like, have these two franchises kind of turned a corner, so to speak, like going in totally different directions? I guess we'll find out this Friday, but I mean, like, just based on what we saw, I mean, like, this was not a team that, and let's be honest here, I mean, they had a 2-game winning streak going, the Montreal Alouettes, but if we could be completely honest, you know how many times we've said this year when it came to the losses, like, if a couple of things bounced here and there, that would have been a victory. I'll go so far as to say, like, if a couple of things had changed here and there, that could have been 2 more losses for the Alouettes. I mean, like, these were losses to be, or victories, I should say, that, you know, be proud of the fact that you won, but it wasn't like it was a dominant win. Like, this team desperately needs a dominant win. Mm-hmm. And one would think, with the Ottawa Red Blacks and the state of affairs that they were in up until recently, that should have been the game where you just go in and punch them in the face and walk out with a W. Instead, you let them hang around way too long, and you had no answers whatsoever. No. And you just look, like I said, this team looks to be in disarray. Yeah. And I don't know if you can necessarily blame it on the fact that what happened with Gary Stern and Vernon Adams. I don't know if you can use that as an excuse, but and really, truly, you shouldn't. But
I still think it was part of the equation. I still think it was easily a part of the equation.
It could very, very well be. But no matter what, this team still ends up with yet another loss. Mm-hmm. And any good momentum that was built up, you can only blame the bye week for stopping the momentum in the tracks for so much, but you've got to be able to go out there and play. Like, this team hasn't changed all that much. I mean, Vernon Adams wasn't going to play in this game anyway. So, I mean, one can make the argument that, you know, Vernon Adams not being part of the team anymore, it shouldn't have made any difference. But I mean, it was still the same team that went out against Hamilton for the most part, with the exception of adding Raheem Wilson to the lineup. Yep. So, I mean, for all intents and purposes, yes, this should have been a W for the Alouettes, but instead they just pissed it away, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. The biggest surprise, I think, to start off the game itself, Cliff, was when something, you know, as we know, Trevor Harris is not known as a running quarterback. Is literally first play of the game, he takes a run for 26 yards. And we're like, what? What did we just see?
Like, I know it's Labor Day weekend, you go out for a rip bod, but, you know, I mean, it's 26 yards. What the hell? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And to the point where, like, that was actually considered like the highlight of the first quarter, like, as far as the Alouettes and their video board goes. Like, that was the highlight of the quarter, was that 26-yard run. I'm like, okay, but how many points did we get off of it?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Zero.
Walter Fletcher led the team in rushing with 62 yards on 9 carries. Joshua Antwi had 56 on 5. Receiving, pretty good. I mean, four receivers. 8 receivers in total had 1 catch. Had at least 1 target. The team was led by Tyson Philpott for 71 yards until he tweaked. I think he tweaked an ankle. I think that's what it was. Eugene Lewis, 63 yards on 6 receptions. Reggie White Jr., which is a name we really have not seen that much in the past couple of weeks. It was nice seeing Reggie get back onto the stat sheet. 4 receptions for 50 yards. Jake Winicky, 39 yards on 4 receptions. Jake Caddy
finally got a tutty.
Yeah, but that was that tutty that was near the end of the game, which the only positive for that touchdown, which I was trying to get a point across to a fan in the stands, is that it matters because it's a divisional game. All points matter when it comes to a divisional game, because as of right now, I think they are up 7 in the series.
Yeah.
With two to go.
Yeah, 2 more games to go in October, but and who would have thought those 2 games all of a sudden become pivotal?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I know. Those Thanksgiving Day and the return Thanksgiving, the leftovers game. They're going to be very big. Again, we got to mention Arbuckle, 20 of 31, 313 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. Leading receiver for the Red Blacks was Jalen Acklin. 7 receptions, 159 yards, couldn't be stopped.
He really couldn't. And my gosh, he just went off. And I forget which game it was. There was one game that he just looked so lackluster. And you even wondered, I think it was against Edmonton, if I was not mistaken. He looked average at best. And to the point where people were even wondering, like, why did we waste our time getting this guy in free agency? Mm-hmm. Well, I think the game against Montreal proved, like, that's why you go get that guy in free agency.
Yes. So I think there's a lot to this. I mean, as I said, this team just did not show up, whether it were issues off the field or not. This is the game that they really needed to win. They did offensively did okay, but the problem is, again, it's like, even though it's 10-10, they just gave up on what made that 101-yard drive so special. They just completely gave up on it.
Yeah.
And next to that too, Cliff, was the attendance. We're coming off of a high from that last Saturday game. Sure, there was a week in between because of the bye, but 15,303, lowest pre-pandemic crowd since '98. And this is in the same week where where it was the anniversary of the Alouettes celebrating their 100th consecutive sellout. 12 years ago.
God, it seems like a lifetime ago.
I know. So what was it? I did get a chance, and I'm supposed to follow up with him, but I did get a chance to speak with Alouettes president Mario Cecchini at practice on Monday. And we were talking a little bit about that too, about the attendance and stuff like that. And I think what Mario was trying to get across, Cliff, is that even with all the publicity that was done on social recently before Gary had to step back, yes, he was promoting the team, hoping people would sell out, et cetera, et cetera. What people need to understand is that, there are many ways that teams can list attendance and announce attendance. And Mario, by the way, Cliff, he said this to us, I think it was either on last year, I think it was on last year's State of the Union and State of the Team Address. That's what it is, by the way. That's the new name for when Mario comes on. State of the Team Address. When he spoke with us last year on our season finale for season 6. And, the team is not going to just paper the crowd. I get that. But still, you have what did I say? It was 27% decrease from one game to the next.
Yeah, that's a significant drop off.
That is. And it goes, and yes, I understand all the variables were perfect for the Family Day game. I get that. $5 tickets for kids, yada, yada, yada. To me, it's concerning. I still think it's concerning. I do understand, as he mentioned, that yes, season tickets are up, sponsorship is up, et cetera, et cetera. That all positive, which I completely get. But as a fan and somebody who's been watching the team for as long as I have, it just scares me when I see a 27% drop for one game.
No. Not to mention, too, that this was a Friday night game, so it's not like there was school or work the next day for many people.
And it was a long weekend.
It was a long weekend, and one could probably make the argument that a lot of people probably got out of town. And, okay, yeah, there are people that are going to do that, but people have been going out of town for the weekend anyways, and I'm sure that was probably the reason as to why they wanted Thursday night games, is because they thought people would go to the game and then go out of town. But I think there's so many factors involved as to why people just decided to stay away. I definitely think that bye week, if only they played the next week, I think they just built off that buzz, and they just didn't. I think that was the big thing, was even though Gary Stern was on Twitter after the victory versus Hamilton, and he was like, yeah, we got to fill the stadium next time against Ottawa. We got to, it's going to be Labor Day weekend. It's going to be great, blah, blah, blah. It just didn't happen. And why? I mean, as I said, like, it was Friday night. The weather was nice. I mean, it was a long weekend. I mean, there's all the reasons why. And again, especially after the way that the team won versus Hamilton in such exciting fashion, after having 21,000 fans in the stands. What happened? Like, really, what happened? Was it because this team went in the direction that they did? Was it because they got rid of Vernon Adams? Was it because Gary Stern is now all of a sudden a silent partner with the Alouettes again? It's really hard to say. I mean, I
don't know. And I think people need to understand, too, and this has always been my thought. I think I may have mentioned this last week, too, is that even with the change with Gary Stern stepping back, minority ownership. Yes, he was, some people like to see what he did on social. A lot of people did not like to see what he did on social media. But there still is the rest of the, of the estate, the 75 that owns 75% of this team. No matter this doom and gloom that people keep talking about. But again, I'm not going to rehash that, but I think people need to understand that. I am interested to see, Cliff, what happens this week. Will it be the return of Vernon Adams effect? We'll see. Will there be a slight uptick? Yes. I mean, the team is averaging about 17,000 this year, which I think is pretty good. First year after a pandemic, first real season back after the pandemic, I think it's good. 17,000, I think, is good. It can be better.
And that is despite all that's been going on, like all the off-field stuff and everything. And despite all of that, despite the fact that the Alouettes are under 500 win-wise, yeah, people are still showing up for the games for the most part. So it really truly does become now, how do we keep the fans coming back? How do we get them on board? And really, one would think winning football games. We've said this a million times. Winning fixes everything. And yeah, the Alouettes won 2 games in a row, 2 very exciting games by the skin of their teeth, but they still won. Mm-hmm. You would think that would be enough, like, for fans that saw that, especially if you were in that crowd against the Hamilton game. In the Hamilton game, if you were in that crowd and you felt the buzz and the electricity of that, like, most people should have been like, hell yeah, I want to be part of this again. I'm going to go buy more tickets. Absolutely. But they didn't. And one has to ask why. What was it that kept the fans away this time? Or a good part of the fans kept away this time? And based on that lackluster effort Labor Day weekend, how many are now looking at this team like, maybe not. Maybe they were just lucky. And, maybe this is, maybe I don't want to waste my time going to the stadium. I don't want to waste my time with this team. I don't want to waste my time. I have to wonder just how many fans really feel that way. How many people in Montreal really look at this team and like, they don't have that buzz. They don't have that excitement, And again, this team, this is self-inflicted. They got rid of all the things that made this 2019 team so exciting. They're not there anymore, other than Eugene Lewis and William Stanback, who, is injured, but he's still part of that. Like, all of the big elements, shall we say, of that exciting 2019 team that everybody fell in love with are gone and replaced with personnel that don't quite have that same excitement factor, that don't quite generate that buzz. I mean, you've gotten rid of Coca-Cola, and as you said, Tim, replaced it with RC Cola,
generic brand,
or grocery store soda. I mean, that's really what it is. And you're trying to sell the grocery store soda as Coca-Cola or Pepsi, and people aren't stupid. They know that what you're offering up isn't going to cut it. So I think it's true that it's really going to be interesting this Friday to see the turnout, see what people think, and more importantly, how will the Alouettes do against this BC Lions football team that they themselves have gone through a bit of a whirlwind these past few weeks?
Exactly. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking with Reid Johnson about from the Markcast. We're going to bring him on right now, talk to him about the game itself. And when we get back, we will also do at Cliff. With us this week to talk about the matchup between the BC Lions and the Montreal Alouettes is a guy that I think we'll find a little bit more, but he started off in alternative football, but has gained a cult following, I would say, within the CFL and his podcast, the Markcast. We welcome to the show Reid Johnson. Hey, Reid, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I hate to correct you. First of all, it's America's CFL team.
This interview is over.
There's at least one person in Maryland that may disagree gently with that assessment.
I have blessings from Amar Doman, owner of the BC Lions. I have the blessings of the commissioner of the CFL, Randy Ambrosi. I think we are doing good. I think even Gary Stern, RIP his tenure. I think even Gary was kind of a fan of that. Just to, Gary was into self-promotion, and we're into self-promotion, and in the BC Lions. So I think Gary would have given me the signal too for it to sign off.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah.
If Gary's willing to sign off, then I guess we can accept that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, Reid. Whatever you want to tell yourself. First, at least I had to ask, dude. I mean, the thing with Vernon Adams, obviously, quite a few Alouette fans are upset and crushed that VA is going to be on the other side of the field. Well, other side of the field this week. Earlier in the season, thoughts of maybe he was going to Edmonton, and then this whole goes down. What's your take as a BC Lions and CFL fan when you heard about VA being traded over to the Lions?
Well, it was exciting. So Vernon lives in Tacoma. He's from Tacoma. I mean, he doesn't, but Vernon's from Tacoma, about 20 minutes from where I live. When I had him on the show, I didn't even realize that because he was on back, obviously when he got the big deal signed with the Alouettes back in, I guess that was the, late winter, spring. And, I am a fan of Vernon. I don't always know if I can be fans of players and not necessarily, I think they always are performing the best in the field. We had guys that went into the USFL, which we cover as well. And, you watch that and you're like, oh man, like that was a bad, probably would have liked to have that back. But really, obviously tracked Vernon through Montreal. And then a lot of the guys that I write with, a lot of the guys over at the news hub sites, we're all big VA supporters. And so when I had gotten a little tip the night before, like, hey, be looking towards BC tomorrow to make a move. And I texted the guys that I'm friends with, and I said, you all are going to be over the moon tomorrow, excited that, that this is happening. And then obviously all the news came out. But because I think Vernon is obviously in a better position now than he was playing second fiddle to Trevor Harris in Montreal.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, again, we say the story, and this is, we've been day one guys with Vernon ever since he came here to Montreal, and it was had him on the pod a few times. It's tough because as many people saw and as many people heard last week, Reid, I just felt that VA was done dirty throughout the entire 2022 season. I don't think he ever got a fair shot, even if he was considered at the beginning of the year, quote unquote, the guy. But when it comes to VA now, I mean, how does that change the dynamic of the BC Lions at the quarterback position? I mean, considering too, it's like a reunion of sorts because right now, we haven't seen the depth chart as we were taping this, but VA is technically behind Antonio Pipkin, which he supplanted just a few years ago to become the guy in 2019. What's your thought going forward when it comes to the QB position?
Well, I'm glad that BC is making moves, right? Because it has there's a weird situation this year. Nathan Rourke was on such this sweetheart deal and the rookie, and they were able to bring in all these guys, and you've got, we were able to pay Lucky Whitehead, to pay Brian Brim, pay all these guys, Keon Hatcher coming in, and they're in the position to win right now. And so when Rourke went down, it was funny because for the week leading into the Saskatchewan follow-up game, everyone, oh, Michael O'Connor, we feel great, and two Canadian quarterbacks, and they were just 1A and 1B, and we feel just as good with Michael O'Connor. And then, obviously, injuries and everything that game. But it was like, we got to get on the phone, and we got to make moves now. And I'm glad that they did, because BC is loaded to win now. I don't want to wait and see what happens next year. You never know. Nathan could never come back and play another snap in the CFL ever again. And so I'm glad that they made a move now. I'm glad that they were aggressive, and I think this is the best move you could make. I don't know if it's going to, it's up to Vernon if he's going to be able to rise to the occasion or not. But I think that they certainly put themselves in the best position.
Of course. I mean, and I'm currently looking at what happened with the practice this week. VA, he had the issues with the tendonitis in the elbow, seems to be back to 100%. Michael O'Connor, actually, he has an abductor issue, and he's been limited all week. So once the depth charts come out, Cliff, it's going to be very interesting to see how it's going to go in BC, right?
Oh, without question. And if they do decide it is Pipkin and VA as 1-2 as far as starting quarterbacks go, I just have to wonder just how long of a leash is Antonio Pipkin going to have?
You don't make a big splashy move like this to bring a big guy. It was funny. They Matt Baker had posted Rick Campbell, them asking Rick today, coach, head coach, like, is VA going to see playtime this weekend? What's going on? And like the fire department was driving by, and there was all sorts of fire trucks on. It was like the worst time to do a soundbite. And I tweeted, I said, maybe Vernon was just burning up the field. Maybe the fire department had to show up. He was just cruising. But I mean, you don't obviously make the move and bring in Vernon if you're not going to, play him. And I don't think Pipkin has a long leash. If anything, it's just Vernon hasn't had time to learn the rule book fully or the playbook fully. But I think Rick said today he had 5 or 6 practices with the team. So he certainly should be, somewhat acclimated at this point.
And being a CFL veteran too, obviously, I think it won't be too much. Like, I won't say necessarily plug and play into the offense, because obviously the offense was designed with Nathan O'Rourke in mind. But I think VA is that kind of quarterback that can pick up things pretty quick and just get right to it.
Well, VA reminds me more of, I think he's more of a Nathan O'Rourke style, just more mobile than, Pipkin. And it's just, he doesn't fit. I think Michael Connor was a little bit more. Pipkin doesn't seem to fit into that. And I'm just, I think he'll go back, happily and quietly to second, once he can and fill that backup role that he's been doing.
That would be interesting. Twice bitten hate, Cliff. That does occur for Pipkin, man. But you know what, Reid, we've seen an issue too before with quarterbacks who've come in or just been recently traded where, as you said, the playbook was made from Nathan O'Rourke. But this is all, we've also seen it where quarterbacks have been traded, they come in earlier than they should have. Trevor Harris is a very good example of that, because at that time, the playbook was not for him. It was for VA. Do you think there's Johnny Manziel is another example here in Montreal, but do you think how much can Vernon actually learn in just a couple of days?
I mean, with 8-2 right now, it's certainly find out. I think it's worth figuring out. I think Montreal is really setting the world on fire right now, especially losing to the Red Blacks last week. I think if we were coming in against Winnipeg or maybe the Rough Riders again, okay, let's take it easy and kind of figure it out. But I would just kind of go for it at this point. I mean, even if they get a loss, I think going 8-3, I think is okay with him getting live game reps and moving through it that way.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Cliff, when you're looking at this matchup this week, obviously, as Reid just said, the Owls coming off of a game which I think a lot of fans thought that they should have won. They should have beaten the Red Blacks, but it just came out flat. And we knew it was a very poor week across the board for the franchise. But what are your thoughts heading into this into the game between BC and the Owls?
I think the pressure is definitely on Montreal. I mean, pressure's on BC, of course, because they want to stay competitive with Winnipeg and to a lesser extent with Calgary. But I think Montreal, knowing full well that the Eastern Division is still very much up for grabs, they've really got to get their act together. And if they're going to have offensive outputs like they had last week versus Ottawa, then they're going to be on the outside looking in before you know it. I mean, Ottawa, I think they've started to finally get their act together. So Montreal really now has to, the pressure really is on Montreal and this organization to really get themselves in gear. And if they're playing against the BC Lions, who now have their former quarterback in the lineup, I mean, I definitely think Vernon Adams, as much as he's wanted to take the high road and, say it's, it's a business, blah, blah, blah. I think there's a very big part of him that just kind of wants to get in there and run roughshod over the Alouettes if he can. And who knows this Alouettes team better right now than Vernon Adams?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. If you were to actually look at the matchup, Reid, and if you were to see if there was one weakness that the BC Lions had going into the matchup on Friday, what would you think that it would be?
Well, just to preface too, real quick, it's so interesting to me, and just even listening to you guys talk and kind of break this down. The CFL is so much more interesting for me to break down and talk to people and analyze. We talk USFL and, going through that season, and like Vernon going to BC, that was like the biggest news of the week for me, like on a high all week going through this, thinking of all the matchups. We're even talking Calgary, Jake Mayer, everything right there. I just hope people appreciate like how interesting and like intricate, analyzing and kind of breaking down the CFL is. I don't know if that gets lost over in the world of like other alternative football leagues. Like I don't think fan control football is garnering like, even 1/10 of like that, man. And then they got this trade coming in and this history and then this is going on. And I mean, you had the Garrett Marino stuff this week. I mean, you just had so much stuff going on. BC, I don't know. To me, it is the quarterback. I mean, I know we've been talking about that, but I would pose it to you guys. You seem to be looking at it like, okay, Vernon, this is the rock star coming in. I posted Vernon coming to BC, and a lot of people are like, well, BC gave up the season, or well, this sucks for BC. I mean, not everyone looks with Vernon as rose-colored glasses as I think we all do on the podcast.
Could be, but I think everybody was so enamored with Nathan Rourke and just how much of a tear he was on. I mean, in your opinion, do you still think that he could walk away with the MOP award this year, even though he only played 9 games?
I don't know. You tell me. The CFL season's so long. Was it Caleros won the MOP last year, right?
Mm-hmm. He did, yes.
I don't know. I think it's people, right? CFL starts after Labor Day. We're moving on. I mean, I think come October, November. I mean, Rourke isn't coming back. I mean, I hate to spoil the BC social media of like, well, late season return. I mean, you obviously, especially at this point, don't trade for Vernon if Nathan Rourke is coming back. But I don't know. I mean, maybe Vernon comes in and sets the world on fire, but it's probably just going to be Caleros again, right?
It would be hard pressed not to. I mean, if you're talking about, well, then again, you're talking about outstanding. This is the difference. Like, I think if it was MVP, most valuable player, then 100% it's Caleros. But when you're talking about outstanding, then that was Nathan Rourke. Like even if it was only 9 games, he was outstanding pretty much 8 of those 9 games. I think there's only one game where he was kind of okay, and even okay was pretty darn good for him. So
mm-hmm. I've had that happen too before, Reid. So I've gone through this situation too. It's where when I was covering the Reno Football League, and I think it was one of the quarterbacks that went down, and he was done for the season, and he only played half the season. I still was going to give him the MVP anyways, or Randy Hibbert. I was still going to give him the MVP anyways. I was basically outvoted by my co-host on that podcast. But it's, again, Cliff brings up a good point, MVP versus MOP. But I mean, it's you can't argue with what Cliff says. But I mean, it's hey, we still have we have more than half, just over half the season to go. So I mean, who the hell knows? I'd give it to him. I'll see why not. Give it to him. He deserves it.
That's what I've learned with our short time in covering the CFL now is it really is a tale of multiple legs of the season, right? Where, last year, BC looked pretty decent last year starting out. I mean, it was against the Red Blacks. It was against the Elks. I think, we had strung together a few wins and then, they totally fell apart because it's such a marathon. It's just a totally different beast, the CFL. And I always have to keep that in mind is, I mean, even in the NFL, but just to a greater extent, it really is what have you done for me lately? And, Calgary could come out of the blue again, or not out of the blue, but, rally like they did last year, make a deep run. They got Jake Mayer now. I mean, it's just, it could change, over the course of month to month, and just, we could be a totally different spot.
Oh, for sure. I'm sure neither of us saw Mayer coming in and Bo Levi being benched. I don't think anybody saw that coming in. That really did change the West in other than the Blue Bombers. I think that really was a shakeup of the West, and then obviously with VA coming in now this week for BC. Who again? Anything can happen. By the way, you guys, I just happened to check. The Owls are not getting the home betting line, the home 3 points for the betting line this week. BC's actually favored by 3.5 with an over-under of 54 points. So, and that's considering a BC team that has not had a very good history in Montreal over the past, 10, 15 years. So I'm not surprised with the line itself, but then again, I mean, I guess they're going based off that, based off the quarterback situation. So.
Well, BC famously came in and won last year. That's when you lost the bet to me and had to change their profile.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if recent history says anything, BC came in. That was a thrilling game last year. I watched that. I was, what was that in? It was in October. I was filming the wedding, and I watched that game on my phone during the cocktail hour of the wedding. The BC and Montreal game. Yeah.
And funny enough, VA, during that time, like, it was before his injury. Like,
yeah.
We said last year, like, he was kind of going through this Jekyll and Hyde phase. Like, he'd have one outstanding game, one not so outstanding game. And I think that was one of his not so outstanding games. I think he did okay, but still made a lot of mistakes. And just, it didn't look like the VA that we all know and love. Mm-hmm. And it was just crazy that, okay, BC was kind of having its struggles, but they got it together. And it's kind of funny. Like, I honestly felt like those two teams at that point, like, kind of met at a crossroads. And both went in completely different directions. I like, now you look at this team a year later and completely different. And sure enough, Vernon Adams is now a member of the BC Lions. So, I mean, and he could come and play this game, which I honestly thought VA would be playing in this game in some way, shape, or form, just not for the Lions. So
it's remarkable how the winds of fortune have changed for Montreal just in the last 3 weeks. I mean, obviously when you're, CEO and, co-owner and Gary Stern and all that stuff, but like, I mean, the Montreal was on top of the world like 3 weeks ago, and they had the 2 wins. Gary Stern's blowing up the world. Everyone's excited. We got, the poutine helmets, all this stuff. And then, I mean, and I would certainly expect BC to win this weekend, but if Montreal loses again, I don't know. I can see their momentum continuing down. I really think that they got to kind of right the ship here.
Yeah, it's like that bye week was like the worst thing that could possibly happen to them. Like, there's never a good time to take a break when you think about it. But I mean, as far as momentum goes, like, it just kind of stopped dead in its tracks, and just they couldn't get it back going against Ottawa. And now, as far as I'm concerned, like, they've got a pretty tough hill to climb against BC, because regardless of who the quarterback is, BC has so many weapons when it comes to offense. I mean, you just cannot take this team lightly at all.
Mm-hmm. Hey, and Owls have another bye week next week. What the hell? What's going to happen now?
So there, as I said, if the pressure wasn't on before, it certainly is on now. Like, this is going to be a very pivotal game, I think, for both teams.
I just don't get, like, and obviously you guys are in a lot more, entrenched in the Alouettes. I just never understand, like, paying Vernon, having the big contract, bringing him in, then we bring back Trevor Harris. It never felt, like you said, it never felt like he got a fair shake. No one I talked to on my American counterparts here think that Vernon got a fair shake. We had Gary Stern on the show saying that, Vernon Adams visits with his grandchildren and he doesn't even know Trevor Harris. But yet here now Trevor Harris is. I just don't understand why go through all this rigmarole with the team. I mean, what do you guys make of it?
Actually, Cliff, you had something interesting that happened last week that you told me about what Trevor Harris did. That usually was a VA thing, right?
Yeah, like in all of his time here in Montreal, whenever Vernon wasn't playing, whenever it was injury or being benched or what have you, the one thing that he would always do during halftime or in TV timeouts and things like that is he'd grab a football and he'd just toss it with the kids in the audience and, have that little back and forth, which was always nice. Last week during the warm-ups and all that, Trevor Harris actually started to do that with the fans in the audience. And I got to say, it really felt forced. Like, I mean, like, I don't know if it's just, I don't know if someone got into his ears like, hey, like, this is your team now. You got to be the leader and, do what VA did, like, as far as fan interaction goes. And I mean, he did it, but like, it looked so uncomfortable, quite frankly. Like, it just felt like, okay, I'm doing this because the other guy did it, kind of thing. I don't know. I think that's a great anecdote.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it just felt like, okay, like, yes, this is Trevor Harris's team now, and will likely remain that way for the rest of the season, barring injury. But it just felt, like I said, it just felt so choreographed, so orchestrated. So
I would expect something like that coming from Dominic Davis or from Davis Alexander, not from our starting quarterback. Is that a fair analogy, Cliff?
I would say so.
I mean, Reid, if you were to see that for your favorite NFL team, don't you think that would be a tad strange?
Well, and I think it's interesting. We had I had Matthew Scanetti on last week. He was heading right to Montreal and covering that, and he said the same thing, that like Trevor wants to win for Trevor, right? Wherever he is, and Trevor, and not that he won't rally the team and be the face of the franchise, but like Trevor wants to be, to win it for Trevor. Where Vernon is very much like, I got all my boys in my locker room. Everyone likes me. I fly them out to, Washington. We do the camps. We do all that stuff. Like, it does feel, I think that's a really, really interesting anecdote, that it feels like, yeah, Trevor, well, okay, I got to step in. I got to do this now. Like, I don't know Trevor. I haven't interviewed him, but every interview I've ever seen with him is like anti-charisma and just anti-whatever. And not that you can't lead a team that way to victory, but it's certainly not. It's just a very different dynamic than what Vernon is.
Well, that's it, and that's kind of the whole mood of the team, as I feel is kind of shifting in that direction. Is to, okay, well, this is our leader, this is what he does, and do we have to act accordingly, kind of things. Like, so I'm really curious to see how this team is going to respond, knowing full well that, okay, this really is the Trevor Harris show now, good, bad, or other, and how do we perform? How do we go out and do what we do with this guy running the show?
Mm-hmm. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens this week. Does Trevor come out and throw the ball again with the fans, or at least try to start it up again with the fans? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, to me, it's also kind of interesting the fact that he's willing to throw the ball at fans, because as we've discussed on numerous times, Trevor just doesn't like. He holds on to the ball way too long and just doesn't like throwing it at all at times.
Oh, wow. That's just
my assessment.
I know. Reid, looking at the matchup. What is? I have to ask the opposite here, because obviously there's but what does BC have to do to lose this game to Montreal this week?
That's tough. I really, like you said, Montreal, BC, favored going into Montreal. I don't know. I think BC obviously going through a lot of changes right now, but you have the core still there. I mean, I think that Pipkin looked serviceable. I saw the later half of that game, the follow up to the Nathan Rourke injury with Saskatchewan. I came home and saw the second half of that game. They looked a little lost at that point. I think it had obviously not gone well that night. Is TJ Lee is hurt, right? Is Lucky still out? Lucky is still out as well for a couple weeks.
Lucky had full participation at today's practice, as we're taping this on Wednesday, limited for the prior two. So there's no final. There's only the only two people that a decision has been made so far is for TJ Lee, where he's out, and then Isaiah Guzlak Messam is questionable.
Okay. So, I mean, he's going to have a skill set there. I know that BC traded for that, the kick returner too, and I thought maybe that was because my head was still out. I don't know. I mean, I think they would really have to fall apart. I'm really excited to see what Vernon and that team does once he gets acclimated, and it might take a couple weeks. Like I said, I think BC has a little bit of headroom going into this, but I think they would really have to fall apart. I hate to say,
it makes me wonder. It could be we were talking about a trap game last week for the Alouettes. It makes me wonder if this will fall into the same type of thing as I mentioned earlier when we were talking, the Trevor Harris coming in and taking over the next week, or Johnny Manziel coming in and taking over just after a couple of practices. Will that be the same thing for Vernon Adams if he does come in and play this week, and depending on how much snaps he gets? Because, Pipkin has gone, he's been in Toronto and now he's in BC. Everybody remembers Pipkin, but the question is, how will the Alouettes prepare for potentially two separate quarterbacks that used to be on the Alouettes? So it can't be any worse than it was last week. I hope not, right, Cliff?
Well, that almost sounds like a challenge for them.
Hey, Reid, we got to talk to you at least before we let you go. As I mentioned before, you really have carved out a niche spot, or not more than a niche spot, but a cult following itself when it comes to the podcast that you're doing. As I said, you've gone from XFL to USFL to CFL. Explain to anybody who hasn't caught your podcast yet what you guys have done and what you're trying to get across to the fans.
Yeah, so we started out, my old co-host Paul and I, we were the XFL Markcast, because at that point, The Rock and Danny Garcia, his business partner, had just purchased the league out of bankruptcy. We were going to talk XFL kind of first and foremost. And then I think about 3 weeks after we launched the podcast, XFL announced that they were postponing, not coming back in 2021, and they were going to come back in 2022. And so immediately it was, oh, no, now we have to think of a lot of other things to talk about for the next, at that point, year and a half. So we started talking about the Spring League. That was what has evolved into the USFL. There was Fan Control Football, which is a Twitch-based. It's actually really cool if you're into. I'm just not really into arena ball. We talk about it. I've had some of their announcers on, but arena, fan voting, internet, kind of that way. And then obviously when the XFL and CFL talks started, there was a big spotlight for us as an XFL podcast on the CFL. And so we very quickly had to educate of what is a CFL, what is a 3-down, what is a Rouge, kind of all that stuff. Mm-hmm. Mostly motivated by a lot of Canadians really unhappy that, like, God forbid Americans would want to talk about our league. And it really was motivated by, like John Locke in Lost, don't tell me what I can't do. Because I will say, like, CFL fans, the league, it's better some weeks, it's worse others, but do not do a great job of welcoming in people that want to learn about their sport. I am a new NFL fan as well. I actually started watching the NFL because of the XFL. And when I, became a Washington Commanders fan now, no one, messaged me and said, well, I've been to, it's 18 Grey Cups. How many have you been to? And like, you can't do this or talk about this, or like, you need to earn your whatever. So it's interesting. As CFL fans, I understand and take pride in their lineage and fan base and all of that. But now we cover all of it. I've been to a Grey Cup. We have our flights booked for the Regina Grey Cup this year. Excited for that. And I think we do a good personality driven. I bring on a lot of good guests. I'm never going to be your X's and O's kind of, let me tell you the third string, DB that's coming out or whatever. Never going to be that. I'm happy to bring on smart, educated people that are smarter than I am to kind of do all that stuff. But I don't know. I think we have a good, fresh take. I think we get a lot of good guests. I think I've built myself up as a point now where we can get a lot of people that maybe other alternative, like XFL and USFL podcasts maybe wouldn't get. So.
Yeah, for sure. And it's continuous. You do a once a week show. I know you do a lot of work behind the scenes and getting all these guys to come and join you and talk, because it's video based, unlike us currently being just only audio based. But I mean, you broadcast when and where can they find you?
Yeah, every Friday, 7 a.m. Pacific. We do it every Friday. We'll do some live streams. I went, XFL had a big announcement down in Arlington a couple weeks ago. We did the live show from there. A tremendous amount of work. It's just solo now. It's me. So each week it's generally finding someone smart to talk about XFL, someone smart to talk about USFL, and someone smart to talk about CFL. Mm-hmm. So it's challenging, as you can imagine. CFL has a wealth of incredible, talented men and women and reporters and analysts and players and coaches and other podcasters like you guys that can talk. XFL and USFL get a little tricky. As Arash Madani pointed out, last year on our podcast, like, what is an XFL media? What does that look like? Because there's not a lot of us, but I do try to do my best to talk to the people.
Oh yeah, and so, go ahead, Cliff. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so now that you've had you've had a little taste of talking with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Danny Garcia, when are they going to come on to the Markcast?
Well, that's the next big goal, right? I mean, that's, I'm a wedding videographer, so I look at a lot of this stuff as fun and trying to see who I can get on. Obviously, like getting the Mar Doman, owner of the BC Lions, was really exciting, and like getting Ambrosi on. We, like even last week, we had on Brandon Coffey, one of the reporters over at Sportico, that broke the story about the XFL, like seeking investors ahead of the season. So, I try to bring in like, hey, so-and-so, has this information or has a story. Okay, let's talk to them and figure it out. But yeah, that would obviously be the next goal at this point. I've had the president of the USFL on in the past. I've had a lot of other people. So but it is something fun to work towards. So yeah.
And also, you've had us on too. We are greatly appreciated that we're on your live pregame show to start off the season. So it's fun to talk about the CFL. Obviously, I'm not into as much the XFL or USFL, Reid, but with all honesty, dude, congrats, man, because you've really done a great job, and we'd love to have you back again, obviously, in the future here on the flight deck, and we hope you'll have us back also.
Well, no, I appreciate it. And like I said, CFL fans and listeners should be blessed just of the wealth of fan podcasts and reporters and, the team PR people and that you guys work with and the work with you guys, having, and obviously the CFL's been around for, 100 plus years, all that stuff. But it's so nice to have a real league with real everyone covering it and kind of being able to, and as difficult as it was to get into that versus, the XFL, there's 3 XFL podcasts, right? Mm-hmm, there's a couple guys talking about it. We have a couple reporters. CFL has a wealth of incredibly, really smart people talking about the league, and it makes it a lot easier for my part to bring people on versus the other sports that we talk about. So
I get it. No, I feel like
you're doing the thing, man. I mean, you're killing it each and every week. And like I said, the only thing I can say is just keep going. Don't stop. The path that you're on is working.
I appreciate that. So it doesn't always feel that way. So I do appreciate that. It's a lot of work. Like you guys said, and when you book your guests, it's a lot of work behind the scenes. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate you asking me on.
Yep. If anybody wants to follow you on social, whether it be your personal account or whether it be the Markcast, and actually, I don't think you mentioned where to find you on YouTube. Where would they follow those socials?
TheMarkcast.com has everything. You can go to themarkcast.com/watch. It'll take you to the YouTube to watch the show. You can go to themarkcast.com/listen. That'll take you to our audio directory with all the podcast links. _Markcast on Twitter is my very active Twitter Markcast account. And then somehow in my past life, I was verified. So if you want to follow my verified account, you can follow it at Reid Johnson.
Wow. Whoa, look at you. Holy crap.
It helps out though when I'm trying to reach out to people. It does help to have the verified and be able to slide into the DMs a little bit easier.
That's right.
In my previous life, and I did not like my previous career before this, but if there was one benefit, it was that blue check mark. So I guess it all worked out.
It's like the American Express card. Membership has its privileges.
I like that. Yeah.
Hey, again, Reid, we appreciate you, bud, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot, man.
Appreciate you guys. Bad luck this weekend.
No.
Oh, it is on. It is on.
We want to thank Reid again for joining us. If you haven't already, please make sure you check out the Markcast over on YouTube. A lot of great content coming from Reid, and as we talk to him, he's become a big fan of the league, and if the guys from across the league, the talking heads, want to be on the show, his show, and talk about the league, by all means, go for it. Reid, you're doing a good job, bud, and we'll love to have you back again.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Folks, if you're not checking out the Markcast, you're definitely missing out. I mean, it's all football, really, when you think about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're talking about USFL, XFL, and most importantly now, CFL. I mean, he had to pivot at the right time, and it's worked out fantastic for him. I mean, he's pretty much gotten anybody who's anybody in the CFL on the show, including us. So, I mean, that's a win right there as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. So, by all means, folks, definitely go check out the Markcast. Check out what Reid's doing. It is really, really good stuff.
Yeah. Game coming up this week, as we have alluded to even when we're talking with Reid. We got the game versus the BC Lions, the return of Vernon Adams to Montreal. Going to be pretty bittersweet. I know I've already mentioned I will, in respect for VA and all he's done, I will be wearing my Vernon Adams jersey this Friday. as I mentioned to Reid, the Alouettes are a 3-point underdog at home. You know what? Considering how bad the Alouettes have been, which I didn't mention in the last segment, Cliff, versus the Red Blacks at home. I mean, being 2-9 versus the Red Blacks at home since 2014, the Owls have had a better, they've done a better job at home versus the BC Lions since they've been back in '96. So I mean, that's a positive. It's just we just need maybe the addition of these two new guys that we got through trade last week will make a little bit of a difference for the Owls this week.
I'm definitely looking forward to seeing Thomas Costigan and Nafis Lyon in the lineup. Again, I was very excited when this trade went down. I know they've had a chance to sort of get into the system, get into the groove. They've got, they got a chance to be a part of this defense, and I think they'll definitely make an impact right away. Mm-hmm. I really hope so. Along with, I said, with what Raheem Wilson did in his Alouettes debut, I thought he played a very good game. Yeah. I could definitely see Nafis Lyons doing similar, as well as Thomas Costigan in that, along with that defensive line. I mean, the defensive line has been fantastic this year for the most part. And if he can come in and just help contribute to that as well, to help keep that momentum going, that'll be huge. Because as I've said, the secondary right now is not good. It's not looking good. I mean, it's really not. But the defensive line is solid. They've been making plays. They've been doing good things, especially against opposing quarterbacks. Linebackers have been very solid as well for the most part. But I mean, this secondary needs all the help it can get. So if Nafis Lyon can come in and be that, along with Raheem Wilson, be those pieces that will help turn the tide, help get their act together, like that's going to be crucial for the Alouettes as far as I'm concerned against BC. Because let's not kid ourselves. This BC Lions, whoever, regardless of who the quarterback is for BC, whether it's going to be Antonio Pipkin or Vernon Adams, they're going to feast with those weapons at hand. Like guys like Brian Burnham, Javon Cotoy, and Lucky Whitehead, if he's playing. These are guys that they move the chains. They simply just catch the ball and run and score. I mean, that's what they do. So, I mean, this secondary is going to be tested even further this week as far as I'm concerned, and they had better be ready.
Yeah, it's going to be, I said, this really is a must-win game for the Alouettes. I mean, we had said before the whole series itself with this longest homestand in Owls history is that, they need to win 3 of 4. And, a lot of people that I have spoken with have said that they really thought that this BC game was going to potentially be that one loss. Well, we're now going into this. We've already lost that one game within this series already, by losing to the Red Blacks. The Owls need to step up. I mean, they are in second place currently. They do hold that home playoff spot currently. But the issue is they're only a game up now, 2 points up in the standings to the Ottawa Red Blacks, and a game and a half over the Tiger Cats.
Yeah, and right now, Hamilton right now is just a complete train wreck. I mean, things are not going well in Tiger Town. And Ottawa, now that it seems like they've got, I think they found their magic formula, and it turned out it was having Nick Arbuckle as your quarterback. Sometimes that's all it is. It's just a slight change in personnel, and all of a sudden the attitude shifts, and all of a sudden things just fall into place. And I can't help but wonder if now, especially buoyed by these 2 wins against Edmonton and Montreal, Ottawa's got to be thinking to themselves, hey, this season is not over. We're in this. And Toronto, even though they're, I won't say they're running away with the Eastern Division just yet, but I mean, they're winning when they have to as well. So I mean, Montreal truly has to. They got to win. They got to keep pace, if nothing else. I mean, especially too, being this is a Western opponent. Montreal's done well against Western opponents this year, as we've seen, but it's not going to be easy. There's no question about that. I was worried. I like most people had considered this to be an automatic loss when Nathan Rourke was the quarterback. When he went down, you kind of got a little bit of hope if you're an Alouettes fan, thinking, oh, okay, well, I think we could beat this team if it's Antonio Pipkin at quarterback or even Michael O'Connor. But now with Vernon Adams, a member of the BC Lions, especially knowing that he's got to have revenge on his mind, even if he won't say it. And who knows this team better than Vernon Adams? I mean, Montreal, simply put, the Alouettes really, really better have it together, and they got to find a way to win no matter what versus BC. There's just no 2 ways about it.
Yeah. And, just happened to be checking the history between these two teams. I mean, they split the last 10 in Montreal. Alouettes really had been a dominant force versus BC up into the last 10 years. It's just that is it an Alouettes team that has not taken advantage of BC making the trip to the East Coast, or what is it? This is a game. This is a game that the Alouettes need to win. They need to win this game. It's not do or die yet because of the weird East, but with the potential crossover of a Western team this year, you need to be you need to shore up where you are in second place or more, just to make sure that we do get that home playoff game at the end of the year.
Without question. I mean, at this point, really, truly, I think a crossover is inevitable. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if you're not in first or second place in the East, you're watching the games at home. You're watching the Grey Cup at home, simply put. There's no two ways about it. I really think that's really what it's come down to right now. I mean, even the Elks, I think if they were to cross, like if they were in the Eastern Division, they'd be in first place or second even. So, I mean, really, truly, like it is going to come down to two teams in the East in the playoffs. And if Montreal wants to be one of those two teams, whether it's first place or second place, they got to start winning. They really got to put it together. Like the moves they've made right now, like the situation that they've built for themselves up to this point, this is all them. This is what they wanted. This is the scenario that Danny Machocha had envisioned for himself, as far as being the head coach, being the GM of this team, bringing in his people, making the moves, installing his guy as the quarterback, getting rid of all the roadblocks, shall we say, that were in his way. Mm-hmm. I mean, he does have full reign of this team right now. Like, this is his show without question. But now as they say, you've paid the band. Now it's time to dance. So that's really what it is. And
we need. I was going to say, with the way that it's going, we're on course to get a good Trevor this week. We just need to get some consistency. Again, sure, only 7 incomplete passes last week, but still, 2 interceptions and the fumble for the scoop and score didn't help. It's some consistency needs to be shown. Hey, if you're doing a good thing, even if BC, if Ottawa had made some corrections, still use it to your advantage. I just want this team to show that they know how to play. We know they're better than what they've been showing. It's just like 2 years of inconsistency really isn't helping.
It really isn't. And again, if you were to strictly look at the stats, yes, offensively this team is doing the right thing. Problem is, you're not doing it enough. And that's really what it comes down to. And this defense, as I've said, has got to be so much better and should be so much better. Especially, too, the moves you made were the ones you wanted. You brought in your people, coaching-wise and player-wise. You made the moves that you wanted to for this defense. And as I said, this defensive line, I think, is truly fantastic. But everything else is still questionable at best. And you got to answer those questions. I mean, you got to figure out what's wrong and fix it. If you think these guys are not living up to their potential, you got to find a way to make sure that they do. And if not, you can't be afraid to make changes. You got to do what you got to do to make this defense as good as this offense. I mean, again, and we're going strictly by statistics because, again, you still got to put plays together. And that's still something I think Montreal really needs to do better, is put drives together a lot better. Mm-hmm. I mean, we need several statement drives, so to say.
Yep. And we'll see what happens. As I said, it's just get off on the good, just win. I don't know what else to say without just babbling incessantly here. The Owls need to win, period.
They do. And if they can.
I'll be happy with a blowout. But we haven't had one. We really haven't. As you said, we've had close games, but we're due. Yes, we had one for Saskatchewan, but then it turned right back in our favor, against us the following week. We need to make a statement. We need you know what? We don't need a statement drive, Cliff. We need a statement game.
Truly do.
So,
and the thing is, it's kind of looking like Antonio Pipkin may get the start.
That's what it looks like so far, yeah.
But I really have to wonder, like, if you thought Vernon Adams' leash was short in Montreal, I can only just imagine, like, how many milliliters, or millimeters, I should say, is the leash for Antonio Pipkin.
Are we measuring it in liquid now? I thought that's the beer that they're going to be selling for $9 this week. That's a special. That's a special. So.
Or maybe how much Antonio's sweating knowing that he's got big play VA right behind him. Like
he'll be pulled after going 1 for 2 for 9 yards. Anyways,
he might get pulled during the national anthem.
There you go.
If I'm Antonio Pipkin, like I know the pressure has to be on him. Big time.
Yeah. And it'll be, you know what, to be again. I've joked and said be usurped again by VA. Man, we'll see what happens. Stay tuned to our socials to see what the depth chart's going to be, not only for the Alouettes, but you'll also be able to check out to see what is announced by the league and by the Lions for what their depth chart's going to be. Because I know I'll be very interested to see what that is. And by the way, just at least have to mention too, I know you weren't able to make it, Cliff, but for those who may not have known, practice on Monday on Labor Day was absolutely amazing. Whether it's if they're practicing over Percival Molson or whether they're practicing over the Big O, I encourage anybody, if you're able to make it during those times, it's usually from 11:30 to 1:30, one of those two places, but check on the website, the league team's website for where it's going to be occurring, because one will be at Percival Molson at least each week. Attend. It is, yes, it's like being at the game on the field after the game, but it's also a lot different. It's very, very close to what it is for training camp. It's fun, and just to talk to the guys. Everybody is there, from Mario to Joey Alfieri to everybody, who is a part of the organization itself. It's just fun to be there. Got to talk with some great people this week. A lot of the veterans. Got to talk to Gino. Got to talk to Davis Alexander. We have to get him on the pod very soon, Cliff. It was so much fun talking to him this past week.
Oh, absolutely. I believe it. And yeah, folks, I mean, I've said this numerous times in the past, is if you really truly want to meet the players, I mean, training camp is a great way to do it. But I mean, if you want to meet players during the season, like you're not always going to be able to meet them before or after the games, but at practice is the best time, because it's, I won't say a relaxed atmosphere, but at the same time, like these guys, they're working, they're doing their thing. But after when the practice is done, they're always happy to sit and talk with you for a couple minutes or sign autographs, take that photo with you. I mean, like that's the time to really, if you really truly want to meet your favorite players, get yourself to a practice, because that is, I feel, in my estimation, the best time to meet players and really get to talk with them, get to spend some time with them. I mean, that's, to me, like that's what makes this league so great, is that you have that accessibility. Like you are able to go up to these guys and say hello to them and interact with them. And they want that. They want to be able to interact with their fans. So, I mean, and folks, I mean, practice, you don't need tickets, you don't need anything. You just have to show up.
Exactly.
So if you have a chance, as Tim said, by all means, make your way, whether it's at Percival Molson or at the Big O. Go on down to practice, watch your guys, watch them at work, watch them see what they're doing to prepare for the next game.
It's very different. It's very different than camp, and it's very different from the game itself, because you really get to look in and see how they're going to be preparing for that week's game. It's a different atmosphere. It's a completely different atmosphere. And if you're a fan of football, as Cliff is saying, you got to show up. If at least once, that would be it. So that's why, if you are season ticket holders and have been invited to go to Members Day next Sunday, sorry, not this Sunday, but next Sunday, the 18th, show up. It's a different atmosphere, I tell you. Make sure you get there.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, the best way to interact with the players and get to know them on a more personal level, and they want to get to know you too. That's the thing. Like these guys, they love their fans, and knowing that you're going there to support them and show up to be there for them, that makes a big difference for them, I can tell.
Mm-hmm. A reminder too that it is still season ticket member month for all season ticket holders for the Alouettes. Take advantage of your extra seats that you have been given by the team to sit to essentially upgrade your seats or to gift them to somebody else, and to use your 30% off discount not only on food but on merchandise. Remember to bring your actual code with you so you can take advantage of it, because I did last week. I was very happy to do so. Let's see what other new merch Corey and the crew have this week. So, Cliff, I will see you at our regular and our upgraded seats this week.
Yes, very excited. I think I think what we have to do once we get into our upgraded seats is we got to show these fans, we got to show everybody on the socials how we're living it up. So, and if we get a great game out of it as well, man, it's going to make for a fun Friday night.
Exactly. And we will see you guys next week on all socials. But and let us know what you want to hear. What do you want us to talk about? Who do you want on the show? Email me at tim.capper@alouettesflightdeck.ca. Email Cliff at clifford.pine@alouettesflightdeck.ca, and we will do our best. And remember, stay tuned. We got the live draw for who's going to be winning that Delta jacket. So stay tuned. So for everybody here at the Alouettes Flight Deck, for Cliffy D, I'm Tim Capper. Run final approach.